Hey everybody, it's Brian Hunt. Welcome back to another episode of Risk On, Risk Off. And today I'm very excited about to have this opportunity with this gentleman who's going to join me because I think it's a subject that personally means a lot to me. And Scott and I will talk about this, but I think it's also a very great initiative what he's doing. It's been very helpful for a lot of people out there. Now, as we know, we talk about construction a lot in this area as well as other risks. And one of the big sort of factors that is a risk to a lot of construction firms, not only in Texas, but around the country, is just not having the ability to find people to work. There's a lot of demand out there, but there's not necessarily, say, a lot of people who are interested in doing construction. Or maybe they have an interest in doing construction, but don't necessarily have immediately applicable skills. And then that said, there's actually a story that started based in June 2024 this year. There were roughly 295,000 construction jobs open, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Flip side of that, roughly about every year, 200,000 U.S. service members leave the military, either due to retirement or in their service. And a lot of people come out of military life looking for civilian employment. So there's got to be some sort of way to bridge the gap there to meet, there's definitely a supply of labor and there's definitely a demand for labor. But sometimes companies talk about looking for people, but if the HR doesn't see the exact same skill set that they want in the job description, they don't get accepted, especially when AI is doing a lot of the volume looking at resumes. It may not come across so simply. So I met this gentleman not too long ago here at an event here in Dallas for construction, and I heard about his background and what he was doing, and I very much wanted to get him on this show. So I'm very much pleased to add to this conversation, Mr. Scott Friends. Scott, how are you, sir?
Good, Brian. How's it going?
Doing fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show. I know, I talk about risk a lot. And I know you've been having to do some risk the past couple of days with some bugs been hitting the family, huh?
Yep. Yeah, my wife and the kiddos. But they were kind enough to step out so we could do this. So I appreciate it.
I owe them very much. I appreciate that. So please let them know I'll bottle wines on come your way to your wife. So thank you very much. So Scott, obviously you want to get in and talk about your background and what got you here. But before we even get started, if we're playing a modified game of where in the world is Carmen Sandiego, where in the world is Scott Friend today?
So I'm at my home about 30 minutes south of Dallas in Red Oak, Texas.
Awesome. And are you from Red Oak originally?
No, I'm not. We've lived down in Red Oak for about 2 years, lived in McKinney before that, which is, for those that don't know, that's north of Dallas.
Okay.
And before that, Houston. We've been all over Texas and all over the world, really. We lived in Germany for a year, so that was exciting.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So where'd you grow up, Scott?
I grew up in northern Kentucky, probably 15 minutes from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay, well, I want to come back to Kentucky as far as what's been going on past couple weeks, but we'll come back to that. So you went to high school in Kentucky, I imagine family, friends all in the area?
Yep. Yeah, most of them are all in that northern Kentucky, southern Ohio area. Yeah.
Okay. So when did you get the initiative or think that you wanted to join the military?
So, man, I think I always kind of knew I wanted to join, playing with G.I. Joes and whatnot as a kid.
Yeah.
My dad was actually Vietnam era Navy.
Oh, wow.
And some may know that when you're 17, you have to get a parent's signature to join the service.
Okay.
So I knew I wanted to join the military. And I wasn't quite sure what branch. And I can remember my dad showing me old photos and everything of old school Navy, and I thought that was the coolest. But so he said basically you're not going to join any other branch but the Navy because he got signed up anyway.
Okay. All
right, Navy it is.
So tell me about obviously like what were you doing in the Navy, and then was it did you think you wanted to do construction before you got into the Navy, or in Navy you learned you wanted to do construction?
Good question. So I don't think construction wasn't even on my radar.
Okay.
Quite honestly, my first couple of years in, I was actually an air crewman. So like a crew chief, flying in the back of helicopters, and I changed roles because that squadron got decommissioned, and they gave me options. They laid out a dream sheet in front of me and said, here's all the options that you qualify for. And builder was one of those, and that's part of the Seabees, the Navy Seabees, which is the construction battalion.
Yep.
So that really started my construction career. So I, started off basically the equivalent in the civilian world is like an apprentice, pretty much.
Yeah.
pretty much a laborer actually, and then you kind of work your way up, and it's just like the civilian world where you work your way up into learning the trade and into a journeyman type level position, and that's what I got out as, was a journeyman level carpenter.
Good. So what was it? As you obviously been doing construction for a while, so I guess maybe what was that? What made you bite the bug as far as this is something you wanted to probably pursue?
I think it was being able to step back and look at what I built. I really appreciated that. Going, man, I built that with my own two hands, and sometimes it was out of my creativity, or maybe playing off of, not playing, but building off of drawings. And that just, I preferred to do that rather than maintain something. I loved creating something new, and I'm starting to see that within my own kids too, just that sense of creativity.
Wow, that's awesome. So now you're a graduate of Liberty University, correct?
Correct.
Did you attend that while you were in college? Was that like I'm sorry, in the Navy, or was that after the Navy?
So I did some undergrad classes, just the basics. I went to community college for a little bit when I was in, and then they had some classes on base, which if anybody's out there listening that is active duty, I mean, that's the best thing you can do is try to knock out those classes while you're in, because you get the tuition assistance. It's free.
Nice.
But I got out, and I actually thought I was going to pursue a life in full-time ministry. Yeah. And so my undergrad, I completed that in religion. And then we can get later on into what I did in the reserves, and I did my master's of divinity.
That's fantastic. So then obviously you decided, I guess maybe you served your country and figured you want to go out. And so you got into construction. So where was like the first sort of, let's walk through your career early steps out of the Navy.
So I was stationed in DC when I got out in 2011, and a very large general contractor who's one of the top ones now. I mean, they're massive.
Yep.
I got an opportunity with them to start out as a PE. They had a really good program where they would take people fresh out of the service or fresh out of school, and you're forced into the field for a year at least. And so even if you knew you wanted to go the project management route, you at least had that year in the field, understanding what the superintendents were going through, seeing things getting built, learning the different trades. And I really enjoyed it. And you want me to progress on kind of where I went?
Sure. Yeah. Well, maybe before we go to the next stop, let's take a moment here just to let everybody in the crowd know. If there's a question you'd like to bring to Mr. Friend's attention, if you look at this bottom right-hand corner of my screen, or your screen, you'll see a little picture of me. Then next to us an oval which says add a comment. Please go ahead and type in your comment and press enter. And as long as it's clean and appropriate, I'll bring to Mr. Friend's attention. So, and then maybe before we go on to the next job, Scott, so obviously you came from construction. You're in the military. So you're doing construction in the military, but now you're outside the military doing construction, civilian life. I'm curious, initially when you started making that transition, was that an easy transition to do? I mean, obviously you had construction skills, but still being in the military versus civilian life, that's a whole different can of worms.
It was not easy. I will say that. I think that's any veteran that transitions out. I mean, it's not an easy transition. Yeah. And it's not necessarily the job that wasn't an easy transition, because I'm a huge advocate for how seamless that transition really is, going from the service into this specific industry. So in that regard, yeah, it was easy, but just getting out, it's a different lifestyle. You're used to right place, right time, right uniform kind of deal. And now I'm a big boy. I got to make my own decisions. And I got to pay a mortgage. And so that part was the difficult part. But regarding the industry, that was pretty easy.
Good. Very good. So obviously, you were at the large firm that you spent some time out. What was the next role you had? And it looks like you went to Germany.
Yeah. So my wife and I, actually 2 weeks after we got married, I had an opportunity to go on some contract work in Frankfurt, Germany, worked at the consulate out there. Okay. In some large MEP and civil upgrades. And that's the cool thing, about this industry is you can literally go anywhere. Yeah. So I did that contract for a year. Really got a good dose of culture being overseas, not on a deployment. So that was fun.
Very cool. So then obviously you spent some time in El Paso?
I did. Yeah. So after that contract, I was out of work actually for about 4 months. My wife was pregnant with our first daughter.
Oh, Lord.
Man, I was freaking out. Oh, what am I going to do? And so we actually moved in with her mom in Albuquerque for a little bit.
Okay.
Then got a call about a project in El Paso. Went down there, building hospitals for a couple of years.
Well, we talk about risk on this show and all its different facets, but having a kid and not necessarily immediately gainful employed is a big risk you got to overcome. So,
yeah, I was taking whatever I could get, and that was an interesting time in life because I was sending out resumes. It was a lot different than it is now. This is, let's see, she's 10.
Yep.
My oldest. So a decade ago, things were different. I mean, it wasn't always easy to find a position. So
coming off a great recession, a lot of things weren't being built for a while. So
right, yeah, that's true, very true. So I was very fortunate to find a position. I left the field, went into project management for a little while, but then found my way back to the field where my passion's at.
So it seems like, though, if looking at from that point on, you're spending the next almost 10 years in Texas. Tell me what you guess now. You're being relatively new to Texas, or relatively new, and then you've been here for about 10 years. And for people who are not from the area or in construction, how would you describe what's been going on in Texas the past 10 years from a construction standpoint?
One word: booming. Blowing up. I feel like, COVID hit and a lot of industries were impacted, and a lot of my friends that I've talked with, and myself included, we got busier, man. I mean, it's just, there's so much opportunity here. There's a lot of big companies moving their headquarters here. Data centers are growing rapidly here. We've got such a big opportunity in the Dallas-Fort Worth market with, there's new CEOs that come in and people want a different office space, or they're moving into a larger office space. So we get to do those TI jobs. So it's just, if you can't find a job in construction here, you're doing something wrong. That's for sure. I'd say that's Dallas, Austin, Houston, all the major markets.
No, and having basically on my full-time job as I work in supporting the construction industry, from the insurance and risk management needs. But we'll talk about this again. We talked earlier, but it's the one thing I constantly hear is like everybody's looking for people. You can't find enough people, which I think is going to help us transition to this conversation here very shortly. But to that point, so you actually you were in the Navy, but then you decided to go back and you went to the reserves, the Army Reserves. What was that a sort of calling for that?
Yeah, so I felt a tug, honestly. I mean, I'm a man of faith, and so I felt this tug that I needed to give back somehow. And a lot of veterans have an issue when they leave. It's just, oh, what did I do? I want to go back in.
Yeah.
And I was looking for different avenues, and since I had that faith background and the degree, I started pursuing my MDiv. Okay. And I went into the Army Reserve into a program called the Chaplain Candidate Program, which is you're in the reserves while you're finishing up your degree. And then at that point, once you're done, you can go to active duty. You can stay in the reserves, go to the Guard, serving as a full-time chaplain. So I did that for a couple of years. I really enjoyed it. I would say that sometimes I think the chaplains have the best and worst job in the military, honestly, because they're with people at their best, they're with people at their worst, worst day of their lives sometimes. And but it's extremely rewarding. But we ultimately decided that I have 3 kids now, and we decided, hey, maybe this is not going to be the life for us, because I had thought I might go back to active duty full time. But I took that experience, and there's so many great people in this industry that I've had the chance to get to know and love, and love having these personal conversations with them that they can trust me with. And so there's this big ministry calling, if you will, in this industry as well, that I get to really pour into people's lives. And it's not always faith related by any means. Sometimes it's just growing that young man or woman that wants to progress in their career.
So obviously, that's a great segue, because clearly you have a sort of maybe a calling. You serve your country, but you also have, let's say, a calling to help your fellow veterans. And we've talked about this just like, the past 10 years of me in Texas is there's overwhelming demand for labor. But my thing, like you and I talked offline, but the one thing I always kind of get frustrated when I just, in general, my career working with companies, there's an old saying, you can't spell heartless without HR. And the reason I say that is because a lot of times you have people who have their jobs and they require to find skill sets and need like X amount of plumbing, whatever. and they unless even now with AI with scanning resumes, unless that candidate has this specific skill set, it might get passed over or it doesn't get picked up. But I think this is where I want to transition to what you've been doing here as far as talking what your work on your podcast, The Construction Veteran. There's an overwhelming need for labor. And there's an overwhelming, lots of people coming out of the military who are trying to make that transition from being military to maybe interested in construction. But there's like a gap there in the sense that the points aren't connected. But so tell me how you decided to get started on your podcast. What was your calling on that?
Yeah, I think the impetus for that was really, I saw a lot of friends getting out and looking for work and really struggling. And I know how satisfied that I have been in this industry.
Yeah.
And I've had other friends that have gotten into the industry and said the same. And we want to kind of grab these buddies and shake them and say, hey, man, there's this awesome industry that you can apply these skills to. And, to your point, it's kind of a shame that we have a lot of these resume scanners and, oh, you don't check this box. It's very difficult to quantify things like grit or self-control and, just these soft skills. So how do you quantify that? Well, you can't. Integrity, those kind of things. So I think a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people leaving the service have these soft skills that I know me personally, I would not have had unless I joined the military. I mean, it forced me to really grow up fast. And so I had those skill sets and I'm going, man, there's such a big chunk of people, 200,000 approximately getting out of the service every year. And I can't imagine how many of those are struggling with finding employment. And so, you alluded to earlier, what was it, 280,000, 200 something along those lines. I mean, it's almost 300,000 people that we need in this industry. And I'm looking at this big gap over here and I'm going, man, maybe I'm naive, but there's got to be a way to fill these gaps of people that have the soft skills we're looking for, because, a lot of the skills that you need today in the trades, a lot of veterans would, I think, find satisfaction in that. But they also carry those soft skills that I think are really difficult sometimes to teach. And so if anything, we're fast tracking them to really good leadership positions within the service. And so I'm seeing all this, and I had a friend that kind of told me, hey man, light bulb, like you got something here. And I figured, you know what? I think it'd be fun to do a podcast. Quick, funny story from a kid. I can remember recording on like little cassette tapes.
I do
big
too.
Radio programs.
All the time.
I'm going to be a radio star someday. Well, radio's not as big anymore, so podcasts are the thing. And so I just started reaching out to people within the industry that I have seen go from the service to become successful entrepreneurs, CEOs, from the C-suite on down. And I've really gotten to enjoy sharing their stories. I feel like sometimes I get more out of it than the audience does, just because I get to meet these awesome people. And I saw how TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and all that it's great and it's filled with funny cat videos and all that. But okay, well, how can we use it to help this industry? And so that's what happened. And I've been going strong for, well over a year and a half at this point, which is crazy. And it's grown. So
that's fantastic. So everybody who might just join late, obviously we're having a conversation with Mr. Scott Friend. He is the founder of the Construction Veteran Podcast. If there's a specific question you'd like to bring to Scott's attention, if you look to the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you're going to see a picture next to me. And there's an oval that says add a comment. Please type in your comment, and as long as you keep it clean, I'm going to bring it to Scott's attention. So get these questions in here. I think he's got a lot to say and a lot to provide. So
I am a veteran and in construction, so it doesn't have to be too clean. But...
No, fair enough. So let's talk about, your early push to do this, your podcast and how it started. Because when I started doing my social, content marketing and I do my 60 seconds of risk videos on YouTube, and I have this show now. My wife said, don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. Because the start it's hardest. First thing to do is to get started. So I'm just curious how the first ones kind of came out for it. How'd that go?
I bought like a super cheap mic, and like I don't remember what I had recorded on. I think it was like a cheap little recorder box deal. I don't know what it was, but this is a year and a half ago. I've since upgraded all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I found it pretty easy, honestly, to get started once I did. And like you said, that the first step is the most difficult because I think I got in my head just like everybody else said, well, will people like this? And what will they think of me? And finally I went, I don't care. I'm going to put this out. You know, I like it. And if I like it, I'm sure somebody else will. And it kind of took off. And what's neat, and I'm sure you find this as well, is I got my first guest on and it's, hey, you should talk to this person. Oh, you should talk to this person. And it just kind of snowballs from there. And the industry is so big and the veteran community is so big. It's like, man, I wrote a big, long list. I took my LinkedIn, I filtered out everybody that I knew was in the industry and then filtered that out to, okay, who served in the military, started blasting out messages. Hey, would you be interested in doing this? And there was a very small percentage of people that said, hey, you know, it's just not my thing. And that's fine. I'm not going to force anybody to do that. But it was a resounding yes, I'll join you on this. And so if you're listening and I've reached out to you and I haven't gotten there, don't worry, you're still on the list. But as you know, Brian, I don't do a live show, so more power to you. I take time out of each week. You know, it's probably a few hours, and I take time to edit my shows and put things together. So it just takes a while to get to those guests. Or I had an episode a couple weeks ago where we wanted to get something out during Suicide Prevention Month. And so we recorded, and within days I wanted to put it up. So sometimes there's those one-offs like that. And I've been also trying to get some YouTube videos out that I started more recently, but it's involved with the podcast, but that's more just educating people on the industry and less highlighting people within the industry. I want people that don't know as much about our industry to see, you know, what does a project manager do? What does a superintendent do? You know, maybe at some point I'll get you on there. We'll talk about risk. Like
love to have it.
Yeah. Let's explore different parts of the industry.
Yeah. So I'm curious, since you've been doing this now and you know, banging the drum and getting the word out, I'm curious, how have your efforts been received by the industry, in the sense that do you have any specific sort of anecdotes or things where you can say where, you know, certain companies or trades are trying to be a little more pushing out to get with the veterans? What's going on out there as far as actually trying to connect the dots?
I think I've seen a lot of, there's been people saying, okay, like good criticism. Okay, this is great, but what do we do?
Yeah.
And the simple answer is we need to be better at getting to where our veterans are at. Like I think the industry has grown tremendously when it comes to marketing, especially over the last decade. It's gotten great. I mean, I love seeing job site photos and drone videos and all those cool things that we get to do now.
Yeah.
But how are we getting that in front of veterans? One of those ways to do that is there's programs in each branch. At least the Navy called it TAPS. It's Transition Assistance Program. And we need to go where these people are.
Yeah.
There's also a lot more recruiting fairs out there that have been coming up. So I think those are good opportunities. But I think overall the reception of the podcast has been pretty positive. I hear a lot of, man, this is, you know, we need to do this. You're doing a lot for the community, our fellow vets too. I think, you know, I don't publish all the comments or private messages I get, of course, but I've gotten a handful that's, hey, you know, this came at the right time. And to me, like, I don't make money off this podcast. I'm not, that's not what it's for. And I've gotten some swag and stuff like that from different companies, which is cool. Like, I'll rock you that. Heck yeah. Or, you know, I'll wear your t-shirt. But what's been really cool and personally rewarding is the messages that I get from people like, hey, I started listening to your show and it really helped me. I'm currently transitioning out of the Army or whatever, and it came at the right time. And to me, I'm like, that's why I do it. My last guest, he had sent me a text, and there was a guy that he doesn't know that reached out to him, and he's transitioning out and he just listened to my episode. And I was like, you know, hell yeah. Like that's exactly what it's about, is reaching these brothers and sisters of ours.
That is awesome. So to that point, and I'm going to deviate a little bit, Scott, because I think what you're doing is fantastic, but let me, 2 parts.
Sure.
One, you're a veteran. So listen to it this way. I have a friend of mine who's, he served in the military, and he's a risk, very high level chief risk officer for a very large multinational company. And I've gotten to know him for years. And him and I were having drinks one day at a risk management, it was a disaster recovery conference, really exciting stuff, And I was just sort of lamenting as far as my perception. This is like, say, 15 years ago. It was like, I just like we asked people to serve their country and be prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice. And then we say, we have the NFL and advertising and thank you for your service and all these commercials, Bud Light, whatever. But my perception is that when you come out, the support it's not as necessarily, it's not seamless. It's also very difficult maybe sometimes for veterans to get the support they need. And my friend said he told all this when he was in the military. He told all his subordinates, don't fall in love with the military because the military doesn't love you. And not because it's some sort, but you're a number on a list in a large organization.
Right.
Does that sort of carry with me? Because that's the one thing I get kind of frustrated with. It doesn't seem like there's enough. It's too bureaucratic or too difficult sometimes for veterans to get the support or service they need.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. And I think that's why, veteran suicide is a major issue. And I think you can talk to most people about this, is that when you take a young 18 or 22, depending on if they went to school or whatever, young person, you take them, that's really all they've ever known while their brain's still developing in their early to mid 20s. They fall in love with this job in the service maybe, and that's all they've ever known. And now all of a sudden you're going a million miles an hour, and then now you just stop and you're expected to, return to normal. Well, what is normal? How do I find that? And so it's upsetting that you have a maybe week-long class of here's how to type a resume, here's how to dress, here's how to act, here's what you can't say in the workplace. So, and it's disheartening. But I think especially the GWOT veterans, Global War and Terrorism vets, that those of us who have served over the last 20 plus years, we're doing more for each other, I think, than the system, if you will, is doing for us.
Yeah, I was about to say, from what you and seems like others are doing is exactly that. Is like people are trying to fill the gap between supply and demand,
right?
To try to provide some of this service, and I think what you're doing is fantastic. So then, next part is so you've been working with industry leaders. What are some of the initiatives, if you can, if we're maybe explain to me, what are some firms trying to do to make this happen? In the sense that because you take someone who's right out of the Marine Corps or Army, Air Force, take a pick, and maybe they don't have that specific skill set for construction. So there's a training component. Yeah. Are firms really that you are seeing, or at least be able to hire and have an internal training process to get these guys up to where they need? Is it the unions help stepping in, trade services, or the community colleges? Where are you seeing sort of that the infrastructure that makes that transition happen?
I've seen all the above. First off, so there's great programs out there. Speaking of unions, you've got Helmets to Hard Hats. They've got a big presence in the U.S. and Canada. Schools, you have the GI Bill, but case in point, my GI Bill ran out when I was in my grad school. So a lot of these schools are making accommodations to support veterans getting education. Texas specifically, there's the Hazelwood Act, which is if you enlisted out of Texas and you served, I want to say 180 days on active duty, you can basically pass your GI Bill onto your kids and you can go to school for free. So there's those types of programs. I think one thing that I've noticed getting a lot more popular within the last 5-6 years is a lot of these companies have BRGs or ERGs, employee resource groups. And every company I've been at least in the last 5 years, has had a veteran specific one. So I know I'm involved in that. And it's so exciting to get someone that's fresh out. And we want to treat that individual like they're our little brother and sister. Like, hey, I want to support you. And I've gone through this. Follow me. I've done this before. And so I'm really encouraged to see that, because I didn't personally have a program specifically, but what I did, and I think the onus is on the vets themselves too. You got to go out and find that mentor. I was very fortunate to have some mentors that were veterans, some of which did the exact same job I did in the service. And I just kind of I don't want to say followed in their footsteps. I didn't ride their coattails or anything like that, but it was, hey man, here's the situation I'm in. Can you show me? But I've seen that over the last few years get a lot more formalized. And there's other programs outside of business to help transitioning veterans. There's lots of really good nonprofits that assist with that. But we have to use the programs that are there. The VA gets a really bad rep from a lot of people. Other government programs do, but there are programs out there that can help, and there's people willing and able to assist you.
Awesome. So, as you kind of look into the crystal ball, Scott, into sort of the foreseeable future, maybe the next 5 years, what do you think is going to sort of hope to see, I guess, maybe with respects to, bridging this gap between veterans and in the community, the construction community? Are you thinking that this got to still be just hopefully build some momentum, like what you're doing here? Do you know of any programs that are maybe coming online, or any sort of things that you think might be help make this thing a little bit easier than what you've been having to do?
Yeah, what I'm hoping is, we pulled out of Afghanistan a few years ago, and that's a whole different story. But so we pulled out. But I think there's a big population of people that are getting out that we've recognized that now as fellow GWOT vets. What I want to encourage people to do, and what I'm trying to do, is go to the local bases. And I think we're going to see this more, is that get involved with your local community leaders that are military and figure out where their people are at, where they're going to go, where they're trying to go. And we as an industry have got to do a better job of reaching those individuals, because I can tell you from my experience, when I got out, it was a big push for like IT and things like that. I knew I didn't want to do that. Yeah. So we've got to do a better job of getting to those veterans that are transitioning, getting involved in the local school programs for not only college, but high school. Kids that are in the JROTC programs or the ROTC programs in college, and meeting these people where they're at. So I hope that's where we're headed. Like I said, the BRGs and the ERGs, those are doing fantastic. So that's all well and good when people have already separated. But I think what I would like to see is us getting the people as they're going through that separation. So the podcast helps. I'm sure there's other media out there that can assist, but I'm just one small part of this big machine that we've got to change somehow.
Well, I think it's amazing what you're doing. I think it definitely it fits the service, and like you said, you ain't getting paid for this. So God bless you. God bless you for your efforts, sir. Because like
labor of love, man.
Just if you get that one person who, like you say, sends that text, that sort of makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a local group here ran by a guy named Clint Bruce, who's a former SEAL officer, and he brings together people. He calls them Lions and Leaders. Okay. And the Lions are the veterans. The leaders are people throughout different industries, and they'll meet once a month at an event called Bullets and Bourbon. And he's got a shoot house in his office. It's really cool.
Okay.
For those who drink, he's got some bourbon. Got to go through the shoot house first.
I would say first. You do let's do the risk management first. Do the shooting first, then drinks later. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And he has done such a tremendous job of getting people that are transitioning out, because they've got a program called the Skill Bridge program, which was not around when I was in, which can take people from anywhere from 3 to 6 months prior to them getting out, and they will put you in like an internship type program. Well, the company does not have to pay that individual because they're still getting by the service. So there's the benefit to the company right there. Interesting. And then this individual gets to learn, hey, maybe I want to do this type of job, or okay, this is what I thought I wanted to do. I don't think I want to do that anymore. Yeah. And so Clint has had this group of individuals that he kind of cycles through, and it's extremely encouraging to see that. I helped a kid get young man get a position at a friend's company who is an electrician, and there's people out there that want to do the work. Yeah. So I think if it's any encouragement to people out there that are making these hiring and firing decisions, there are people out there, good people, young people, that really do want to do this work, and they see how popular the trades are getting. Yep. But what are you doing to find them? That's the thing. And are you really putting yourself out there enough that they can pick up the phone or send an email and find out about open positions.
And I think what you just said there, Scott, and so again, hopefully is the kind of the sort of the fruit that comes out of your labor, is that firms need to be more proactive to go find the people. I mean,
Yes.
and you got to like maybe go to different areas or try different unique ways to do it to get people. Like actually, you and I both know construction is very much an old school mentality, and it might be one of the last very set in their ways.
Yeah.
And it could take a long way to get someone to change their minds or perceptions or do something different. But I think that's the point. At least I think necessity requires that you're going to have to go be a little more active in trying to bring people in or be more creative to turn over different rocks to get the talent you need, because everybody's fighting for talent, man. Everybody's fighting for talent. So yeah,
there's hiring fairs out there that I personally participated in some, and it's
okay.
It actually became difficult to try to sift through all the resumes that I got to go, man, this is great. Who is the individual that we want to bring in for an interview? Mm-hmm. So the people are there. And so when I hear people complain about, well, we can't find people, and my comment back is, well, what are you doing to meet them where they're at too? Yeah. Where are the people that you want to hire hanging around?
Amen. All right, guys, audience, we're getting close to time. But if you have any questions, like I said, look at the bottom right-hand corner. You see add a comment next to my name. There's oval. Type in the question for Scott, and he'll happy to answer your question as long as you keep it clean. Even though he's former military in construction, we'll try to keep it clean. So, Scott, one question I want to circle back before we kind of tidy up. You did mention something that you're from Kentucky originally, correct?
Yeah.
Do you still have family there?
I do, yeah.
All right, so can you maybe give us an update of what's going on with your family? Because obviously it's amazing. People don't truly understand how bad Upper Georgia, Kentucky, Carolinas got hit. So
I checked in on everybody, and it seems like it wasn't anything worse. At least my family, it wasn't, because we're from northern Kentucky.
Okay,
so it's very far inland.
Got it.
But it wasn't anything worse than maybe losing power for a little while. It's branches down and whatnot, but I've got some friends out in North Carolina, and I've seen just devastation. It's wild.
It's crazy.
And we've lived through a hurricane. I used to live down in Houston, and I can tell you, it looked like a bomb went off after we drove around after the hurricane. So I really feel for these people that are suffering. And there's a lot of groups that are raising funds for those individuals. I know Tim Kennedy, he's a very well-known veteran. I don't know him personally, but I know he's doing a lot to support people throughout that region.
Yeah, Scott, and hopefully what I'm about to tell you is wrong. But we're talking here. This is October 3rd in the late afternoon. I was having a conversation with some of my colleagues in our office, and we do insurance brokerage, and we work with adjusters and insurance carriers, all that kind of thing. Right now, the unofficial number, which I heard this, and it's mind-boggling, and I hope it's not even close to being the case. We're talking thousands of people still unaccounted for are known. So, yeah, that's the unofficial number, which God forbid, hopefully that's not the case.
Yeah, I hope you're wrong.
Yeah, I hope I do too, and I'll be happy to eat my hat if that's the case. Yeah. So, Scott, as we kind of get wrapped up here, I'd be curious, and you made allusion to it earlier. So, when you're not doing your podcast or work as a superintendent, what are you doing?
Man, if I can get outside and just enjoy this beautiful earth we live on, whether that's fishing, golfing, hunting, anything outdoors. I was in Idaho last week. I posted some beautiful photos on my personal LinkedIn.
Yeah.
That was my happy place for sure.
What part of Idaho were you in?
I was in a small town called Ledore.
Okay.
And there's about 100 people in that town. And it is roughly 2 hours from Idaho Falls, about 4 hours from Boise. And I have a good friend. He's retired Army. He lives there, and we went out elk hunting and trout fishing. And yeah, I was on cloud nine, man. It was beautiful. So if people want to check it out, I got some photos that I posted the other day about that.
Yeah, I had a good choice. Took the family. We went to we did Yellowstone. We did the Grand Tetons. And so when we didn't stay in Jackson Hole because it's kind of pricey. But we went over the mountain and went to Victor, Idaho, which was just cool. I love Idaho. It's just, I was such a surprise. I'd love to go back, and Victor was a great little gem of a place. So
Yeah.
no, I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
it's man, it's such a beautiful place, and mountains as far as the eye can see, and then mountains past that. It's gorgeous. It's a lot different than we got here in Texas. We're
No,
big
it's
in Texas, but
yeah, no, it's a
you
different
see past
topography for
the
sure.
next street.
So Idaho is one of your top spots, and you've been around the world a bit. What else are maybe your top 2-3 spots you enjoy?
I liked living in DC.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of politics and such, and the traffic is insane, but the history there is really cool.
Yep.
My wife and I got to visit Austria when we lived in Germany.
Yeah, that's
and we
wonderful.
got to visit Rome.
Mhm.
Anywhere with architectural history, I really enjoy.
Yeah.
Just getting to walk, in the footsteps of people that maybe built these things hundreds, if not thousands of years ago was really cool to me.
Yeah, my daughter is currently on the last leg of basically almost a 40-day backpacking trip through Europe.
Oh, cool.
She left the day after Labor Day, and she's coming back Tuesday. And I actually leave tomorrow for Barcelona. I'm going to meet up with her in Barcelona.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, come back. And she sent me some photos, and she was in Rome not too long ago, and she was at the Colosseum. It is amazing the architecture that's involved with some of these in Europe. So
it's wild to see some of the structures. A lot of them are dilapidated, but
yeah,
some of the ones that are still in pretty good condition, it's just wild to think how old these things are.
And for someone who's slightly involved in construction, or at least has a little above average understanding of it, I still don't understand how they did it. I mean, I still don't understand how they built these palatial things, and so it's pretty impressive. So, Scott, hey, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your efforts. I know it's trope, and people say it all the time, but just as one person to another, thank you very much for your service to your country.
Thank you.
And thank you for your service you're doing to your fellow countrymen. I mean, I think that's what you're doing here is trying to bridge the gap, and I think it's a valuable thing you're doing, sir, and I applaud you for it. So
thanks, Brian. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. So, guys, that's been another episode of Risk On, Risk Off. I hope you enjoyed this. This video will be available on my YouTube channel as long as with the other videos, and you can find the collection there and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Again, Scott's podcast is called The Construction Veteran, where you can find that on all sort of standard podcast venues. And he's got some great guests he's had over the years and some really interesting people. So I would highly recommend you take a little time and listen to what's going on and support his initiative. So until next time, everybody, bye.